Today is Thursday, November 7th, 2019, the year of our Lord. And it is a little after 5:15 p.m., but in order to get a quorum, we had to just wait a little later to make sure we had enough members to make this ordinance committee meeting. So I'd like to call to order and ask Ms. Angie if you'd call the roll, please.
Yes. Mr. Bubba Harris?
Here.
Mr. Wascom?
Here.
Mr. Talbert is absent. Mr. Mack?
Here.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is review, discussion, and recommendations of an ordinance. This will be listed under new business, and this is regarding subdivisions with and without improvements, whether they can or cannot re-subdivide after final plat has been approved. This item was requested to be on the ordinance committee meeting by Mr. Gary Talbert, but he didn't send any information with it, and he's not here tonight, so I'd like to, unless someone just has something to say, I think we should defer this to the next ordinance committee meeting.
I think that's a good idea, but I did want to say one thing.
Okay, Mr. Matt?
Just a moment. It's to my opinion that a subdivision classified, with or without improvements that goes through the current planning commission, just a preliminary plat, it is reviewed by the parish review engineer, should not be able to be subdivided under the minor subdivision ordinance without having to go back through the planning commission, a new preliminary plat in some way, shape, or form to ensure that, everything is re-reviewed and that, it's kind of like different phases of an existing subdivision. You know how they go back through planning and that type of stuff? I don't think you ought to be able to go into a subdivision that was, the preliminary plat was reviewed and all this good stuff, reviewed by the engineer, this whole thing, and be able to do that without going back through that process. And so I just wanted to say that.
I think that's basically what Gary was talking about with this.
I think it is. And
Let me ask a question. Currently, if someone brings a tract of property in, they get it subdivided, and the planning commission approves it, I guess my question is, and then years later, they say, hey, this half-acre tract, we want to subdivide that. Doesn't it have to come back to be reapproved anyway?
well, that's a
Sam?
good question.
Yes,
but
So,
Half-acre tract can't be re-subdivided.
No.
Half-acre tract, you gotta have 12,000 square feet.
okay, so if someone takes a 30-acre tract and divides it into 15 acres, 2 acres,
Then you can come back
and then, but they has to go back to planning to be resub, so my question is, isn't this just a redundant?
no, it's not. That's not true. That's not to my understanding. That's the way it is. So let's make sure that we clarify this.
What's that?
So Sam, if you have a subdivision
Are you talking about
classified not
with improvements or without?
both, okay?
Because there's two different ordinances there. You can talk about subdivision with improvements, that's your big bona fide subdivision.
Reviewed by the parish review engineer, you get a preliminary plat and everything like that. You also, though, with a subdivision without improvements, I'm not talking about a minor subdivision, I'm talking about a subdivision without improvements. It also goes through planning, and it also gets reviewed by the parish review engineer, and you also have a preliminary plat, okay? Those are the two subdivisions that I do not think that you should be able to go into, and divide lots within that subdivision under the minor subdivision rules or regulations. That does not come before the planning commission and does not come before the council. That's
That's strictly y'all's decision.
right. But right now, today, in today's world, I've seen it happen since we've been elected. Particular individuals go into a subdivision, full-blown subdivision with improvements, and subdivide lots within that
How big
without,
are- how big are
without
the-
a traffic study, without anything.
How big are these lots?
How big these lots, well, it doesn't matter.
Well,
It doesn't matter.
he says you can't divide.
But you can.
The council can do it.
No, you do not. I've seen it done without coming before the council. You should have to, but there's nothing right now, to the best of my knowledge, that says you have to.
Well, anytime we do it, if subdivision with improvements, I'm like, do that, because when you approve something,
And that's a good thing, but I don't think it's written, I don't think the ordinance is written such that requires it.
maybe not.
And I think that that's what needs to be changed.
Practice to do that,
Okay.
because, these people that buy these lots next door to them, and then you come in and resub this lot next door to somebody, to make approve for the second lot, that's not like the people.
Mm-mm. It's totally not.
They don't have a neighbor, not a, say, going back to the same.
Right.
That's my,
It
we
is,
have, we have situations.
it changes the overall design of the whole entire subdivision that was approved also. And to me, it just, the whole thing needs to be re-reviewed and approved. Go back through the whole entire process.
Okay, I was just thought that all re-subdivisions had to go through the.
The way
Planning
the way I
commission.
interpret the current ordinance, it is not required and can be approved under minor subdivision requirements. And that's what I think Gary and whosoever else is trying to fix.
Okay, I mean. So you're saying that you could re-subdivide a lot without going to the planning commission, is what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Under the minor subdivision regulation,
You could re-subdivide a lot
you can.
without going to planning commission?
Correct.
I just didn't think that was possible.
It's,
Maybe it is.
it's possible.
Okay,
Unless we change it, which I think we might talk about and
Okay.
change. Okay? Did I cut anybody off? I didn't mean to if I did. Did you have something to say?
Me,
Mr.
that's all right.
Well, no, go ahead.
No, I didn't have anything.
all right, next item on the agenda is, review, discussion, and recommendations of an ordinance. This would be listed on the old business as we spoke about it before, to amend chapter 46 of the Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Article 1 in general, by adding a section on installing criteria and regulations of traffic calming devices, otherwise sometimes known as speed humps or bumps. And I believe this item was placed on the agenda by Mr. Mack. Did you want to talk about that at all, or does anyone have anything to talk about?
I would like to say a few things, and
Mr. Mack.
if anybody else wants to say a few things, that's certainly welcome. I don't have to go first. Okay, I had a constituent of mine that asked me to submit some type of ordinance or resolution that in some cases would allow traffic control devices such as speed humps and whatnot on some parish roads, okay? So there's been a lot of discussion, there's been a lot of feedback, from different fire departments and different constituents, and there's lots of different
Sheriff's office.
opinions, values, all this types of stuff, right? I just wanted to make sure I covered a few things. The intent was not to run out there and just start throwing speed humps all over Livingston Parish and driving the cost to maintain roads up and slow down the first responders' ability to save people in the parish. Okay, that was definitely not the intent. The intent was on certain dead-end roads that currently have a speed limit restriction of 25 mile an hour or less. Put some humps out there that would allow people to pass over at 25 miles an hour, such as emergency vehicles, and still maintain that speed and still protect all of our people and make our environment that we live in more safe, such that there's less accidents and less opportunity for children and whatnot to be involved in an incident, you know, such as somebody playing with their cell phone, not watching where they're going, doing 55 miles an hour in a 15-mile-an-hour zone, and I don't even really want to talk about it, you know, but you know, coming in contact with some poor innocent individual on their bicycle or something. Okay, so I understand that if this does pass, that there would be a good bit of regulation within the ordinance to not allow it in certain situations. You know, but the reason that I had began the conversation is simple. It's a simple reason. It's because to me, if the people of Livingston Parish that live on a road, that own property on a road, have thought about all the pros and cons to having a speed bump on the road, and that those individuals pay the taxes on that road, and if majority of the people on that road want a speed hump on that road, then they already have the right to get a speed hump on the road, especially if they're willing to pay for the initial installation. Okay? I went to Carter's plantation the other day, and they had a speed bump in there, and had to slow down to cross it, and felt like it was a good thing. There's some subdivisions in this parish that it may be better off if we had some speed humps in that subdivision, you know? I mean, we passed some ordinances not long ago that allowed interconnectivity of parish roads within subdivisions to increase the traffic flow within certain subdivisions, you know, and people within the subdivisions are very concerned about, you know, the children and different individuals, you know, being in the street and getting run over and this type of stuff. And so I thought it was worthy that we bring this up and we have some very serious conversation on whether or not, you know, the people and the administration and the council think that this is something that we should move forward. I understand that, you know, there's a lot of literature out there, you know, for it and against it, you know, as far as the cost associated with maintaining it. I mean, we can't even hardly afford to maintain the existing roads, you know, that we have today and that type of stuff, you know. But I thought that this is something we should look into to see what the cost associated with maintaining it was, and if we could get the property owners on the road to actually pay for it initially, that it would be, well, it would be within the ordinance, and if they didn't, then it doesn't happen.
Shane, excuse me a moment.
Go ahead.
Have you forgotten a while back when we had this same discussion in Plantation Estates? And they filled this room up out here?
I did. And majority of the
They still don't have it.
and majority of the constituents that own property on that road were not in favor.
Right.
Therefore, it didn't happen. And therefore, it shouldn't happen if majority of the constituents on a road in Livingston Parish don't want it. It shouldn't happen. But this was for if you had a road and say 75% of the people on that dead end road or that subdivision road were in favor and willing to sign documentation such and were willing to pay for it and understood the consequences of having such, then it would be a good thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we need to talk more about it, you know. And if majority of the council is not in favor, then look, I totally understand, but it's just how I feel about it.
I don't know, I think currently, maybe you can correct me on this, evidently I didn't know we didn't have a law regarding street subdividing subdivisions, but, I'd like to check with our parish attorney. Do we currently have a law that prohibits, an ordinance that would prohibit speed humps or bumps?
Hey, now that's a good question. Let me tell you what I know, and I don't know everything about everything. So, it's to my understanding, the state statute says that if a local government entity wants to put a speed hump or bump,
They can't.
they can. They have the right to. And there's also literature out there that if you notify the personnel that is driving on that parish road that a speed hump exists, then
You could legally do it.
you can legally do it, and you're not quite as liable for any
Well, and I guess.
traffic incidents as if somebody comes through there over the speed limit and runs off the road.
Tears up a
And
transmission.
tears up the road.
I don't think that's correct for the simple reason of, not that they can win, but a person can file a suit for anything.
Well, that's
They
true.
run over, if they run off that speed hump, even though they're speeding, and happen to hurt someone or injure themselves, then they can file a suit against the parish for letting it be on the road.
They can, but chances are, in my opinion, they wouldn't win if you had proper notification.
I guess my question is this: do we currently have an ordinance prohibiting speed humps?
No,
I don't think we do.
no, we don't.
Okay, so if we don't have an ordinance prohibiting it, creating an ordinance is not gonna allow it to happen, is what I'm saying. Is you can, if you want one, you can bring it to the council and we can approve it. It don't even have to be in an ordinance form, because we don't have an ordinance that prohibits it.
You know, that is true, but what we were trying to do was write some legislation that made it fair for everybody and not do we'll do this one, but we won't do that one. You know, if you meet the criteria, then you know, are allowed to have it, and if you don't meet the criteria, you're not. That was just a thought process there.
Well, then, if that be the case, we might could do it in a resolution form, saying that, you know, if you want a speed bump, then these are the criteria that needs to be met. I don't know, we need to maybe check with the parish attorney on that, and.
Well, it's like in, Plantation, I'm gonna use this for an example. They wanted to put up, warning signs
Mm-hmm.
for the speed limit itself, you know. And they looked into the cost of that, and it was way too expensive. You know, they didn't want to get together and pay it, so. I know you've seen a lot of those around on different roads, especially state roads, and in school zones where it tells you how fast you're going,
Mm-hmm.
and also it flashes the speed limit, so.
You know, I've seen that, and that seems to be something that more local government entities, like cities and things of that nature, are going to. They're going to more of that flashing speed limit sign that actually flashes your current speed and tells what the actual speed limit is, so that people recognize the fact that they're speeding, and it does help the individuals that choose to follow the speed limit slow down. You know, if they realize they're speeding, then there are a lot of individuals out there that will try to try to slow down, you know, keep people safe.
All right, is there anyone,
We don't really have to take action tonight because I was reading over the ordinance that's currently there that,
regarding speed bumps?
yeah, I think there's some more language,
The draft?
there's more language that needs to go in there. Yeah.
Mr. Lobo, does your daughter have anything she wanna talk about speed bumps? You do not? Is it, you wanna add to it, Shane, or any recommendations?
You know, just defer till next meeting.
Yeah, I think we should defer it and talk a little bit more about it, you know, I mean,
Say something.
I didn't understand what
Do
you
you
said.
wanna read over the ordinance, the draft, or what you have on it now, or do you not wanna?
No, I'm good with not reading it, but anybody that wanted to look at it certainly can. I mean, I don't mind reading over it. It does have in here that in order for a speed hump to be placed on the road, that it would require 75% of the people that own property on that road to sign documentation in support of a speed hump.
Does that mean it would have to be a dead-end street?
Well, that particular statement doesn't mean that, but I wanted to put some type of language in here. I don't think it should be put on cut-through roads, you know, roads running from state highway to state highway or parish road to parish road, but gotta kinda be careful how you word that, because I didn't wanna exclude roads within a subdivision. So, I don't know if we'll put that or not, just still was contemplating that and kinda wanted to hear what other people had to say about that.
Mr. Rainey, do you have something you want to say? Would you come up to the microphone and give us your name, address, where you live, and
Well, and you know,
and-
think about that, you know, I wanna tell you,
it would be very beneficial to, have your voice heard. I'm sure you've got lots of wisdom, and you can help bring that to light here.
it's let me just say that it's a dream, and it's a dream that I see becoming reality. We are going to start overlaying more roads in Livingston Parish in the very near future, period. And we are going to begin to see less and less potholes. Yep, it's coming. It's gonna take a little time, but it's coming.
Is there anything else regarding speed humps? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Adjourn, we got a motion by Mr. Bubba Harris to adjourn the ordinance committee.
I second the motion.
Second by Mr. Shane Mack. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.